Hi everyone, it's me. I'm back. I'm back here with an actual movie discussion, a movie review for the first time in a while. And I'm very excited to start talking to you guys about this movie, which is Molly's Game. It's a 2017 film. It's like a crime-ish drama. Yeah, you'll see what I mean by that kind of description once you actually watch the movie. But it's written and directed by Aaron Sorkin, and it stars Jessica Chastain in the lead role as Molly. The movie's plot is as follows. Molly Bloom is a beautiful young Olympic-class skier. She also ran the world's most exclusive high-stakes poker game for a decade, before being arrested in the middle of the night by 17 FBI agents who were wielding automatic weapons. Now, her players included in these games Hollywood royalty, sports stars, business titans, and also, unbeknownst to her, as you'll see, the Russian mob. Now, her only ally after her arrest was her criminal defense lawyer, Charlie Jeffrey, who learned that there was much more to Molly than the tabloids led us to believe. So, let's get started talking about the good aspects. Now, the first thing you want to mention in discussing the good things about this movie is the writing, because, I mean, wow. Just wow. The writing in this movie is fantastic, and as I mentioned before, this movie is written by Aaron Sorkin, who is, in my opinion, one of the best screenwriters of all time. You know, you might have seen other works from him. Think of movies such as A Few Good Men, or Moneyball, or The Social Network, Steve Jobs. All of those are movies that are penned by him. Now, where you really can tell that a movie is a Sorkin movie is in the dialogue. When the characters converse, they are almost never left speechless. The conversations, they happen a mile a minute, and the things that are said are always very sharp and clever, and they're so fun to listen to. In this movie, there is also a lot of narration. I've seen that before in other Sorkin movies, but in Molly's Game, it seems to be even more prevalent than usual. However, you may notice that I didn't actually categorize this in the bad aspects of the movie, because it wasn't. There was, again, a ton of narration, and it was all done by Molly, and it was done as to describe who people were, or, what she was doing or what was happening in her world and why, or, even what was happening in the poker games. However, due to Sorkin's skill in crafting language and dialogue throughout the films, the narration that Molly gives is always intriguing, and it never felt like a distraction. It never felt like they were just, describing things to you, and it was boring, just fluff to keep making the movie go. You were always invested and wanted to hear what they had to say. So the next good aspect of the film was the story itself. Now, it's so very fascinating. The film is based on a true story, which I don't think I mentioned before. However, I had never heard of any of this stuff before. You might have, those watching, but I hadn't before watching this movie. It took place through about 12 years, and it started in the early 2000s. And it's just wonderful to watch it unfold. It's so unique in all the things that happen. One thing, it's somewhat inspiring in the way that Molly is such a driven person. She's incredibly ambitious, but she still somewhat tries to maintain her integrity through the film and through all the things that she does. I really admire this about the character, and that got me even more invested into the film. She almost immediately became a character that, though we may not want to emulate her and try to reflect what she did in our own lives, we as the audience can still very easily root for her and want to see her succeed due to her personality and how driven of a person she is. I also became even more interested in the story when, after a bit of, light research, I discovered who the people were that were participating in her games. Now, I don't want to spoil it or anything, but there are lots of, famous sports players, a lot of actors that, if you look into it even a little bit, you can see, like, she covers up most of the characters' names, but if you look on any sort of, news source that was written during the time when this movie came out. They wrote a lot about who these fake characters are supposed to be in real life, and that's very interesting to read about and see, a side of these people that you've heard about in the news that, like, oh, they played poker and they gambled and they were kind of jerks. When it came, well, as many people can be when it comes to their money and protecting it and losing it and all that sort of thing. So, it was really cool to understand how Molly, was in a way, in charge of all these superstars and business tycoons when they were playing, even though she didn't necessarily have the same status that they did. When they were playing, she was in charge. One more little thing before I move on in the good aspects was that the acting in this movie was very well done. You have Jessica Chastain, Idris Elba as her lawyer, Kevin Costner as her father, and then Michael Cera, who is actually, I enjoy him in pretty much anything he is in. Does a really good job of playing somebody a little bit different. A very big jerk, actually, in this movie, but he plays that very well. And so they're all fun to watch. They have interesting chemistry together, and they're all very good in this movie. So let's move on to the mixed aspects. And there's really only one thing that I want to mention that isn't necessarily good or bad, and that's that the direction or / the shooting of this movie really isn't anything special. So this is Aaron Sorkin's debut as a director. Now, he's written a lot before, but this is the only movie he's ever directed. So it's a little bit understandable that the movie doesn't have a distinct style at this point in his career. Nothing about the shots or, how things were placed in the movie. None of that really jumped out, and it wasn't really an incredibly visual-centric film. However, of course, the storytelling and the dialogue, that more than made up for the lack of visual flair. But I think that as he continues to direct, that Sorkin's going to find a style that suits him, and it really becomes his own in terms of directing visuals. And I just say all of this to let you know that if you go and want to sit down and watch this movie, you shouldn't be expecting something that's incredibly visually stunning. So now we'll move into the bad aspects of the movie. Now, there wasn't like a whole lot of things, like a slew of things that were bad, and I really do have mostly positive thoughts on Molly's Game, but the couple things that were pretty noticeable to me, so that was unfortunate. The first bad aspect is that for as good as the dialogue was, and as quick as the story moved, and as good as all that was, there were still some parts of it that just kind of lost me. There were some segments and scenes in the movie that it just took me out of it. And it was unfortunate, but that's just what happened. I don't think it needed its 2 hour and 20-minute runtime. There were some things that could have been taken out, or at least made shorter in the movie. The other notable bad aspect of the movie for me was there seemed like there was a big tonal shift in the last 15 to 20 minutes of the movie. And there was one scene in particular that kind of makes where that tonal shift begins. And again, I'm not going to go into any spoiler territory or anything like that, but I think the scene, like individually, like on its own, it was good for the movie, and added a depth to an already good character that was Molly. It kind of delved into her, how she thought, and her psyche and all that. But after that scene ends, the movie kind of follows and keeps that tone in the last final act of it. It becomes much more emotionally focused and somewhat sappy, at least compared to the rest of the film. The rest of the film, again, it had that very sharp dialogue with these characters, and it was blunt, and it didn't care a whole lot for the feelings of, like, it had a little bit here and there, but it was never like the main focus. And I think towards the end that this could have been handled differently so that it wasn't distracting from the rest of the film. So for a score, I'd give Molly's Game a 79%. That's very positive. Overall, I really did enjoy this movie, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone looking for an exciting and unique, true life story that is well written and well acted. However, if you're just looking for some Sorkin like writing and dialogue that is from Aaron Sorkin, and that side of distinct style of script and dialogue in a movie, I would recommend, something that is a little bit different and that's more, tonally consistent and coherent and has your attention all the way through. So that's the end of the review. I thank you guys again so much for watching. It would be great if you could like and subscribe to this channel, but again, I'm not going to tell you what to do. But I do hope to see you again very, very soon. Thanks. See you later.